Hi everyone, Elsie Jensen here. Today we are going to make some Southwest flank steak lettuce wraps with an avocado ranch. And we're going to prep up some applesauce sourdough discard muffins. So let's get our muffins going since they need the longest to cook. We are going to start with some applesauce. You need just about a cup, which is close to 2 packages of these squeezes because this is the applesauce we have in our house. Stitch too, because gotta have the stitched ones. So we're gonna put in here, it's about 8 ounces of applesauce or a cup of applesauce. And we're gonna add in our 2 eggs. We're starting with our wet ingredients first. So we've got 1 and 2. And then we're going to use a half a cup of our sourdough discard. I fed it this morning and you can see it is popping up pretty good already. So we're going to use a half a cup of our discard. A little bit more. Okay. I'm going to mix this in here. We'll scoop it out into our base here. And then we're going to add in 4 tablespoons of butter or 1/4 a cup of melted butter. And I use salted butter because I think it tastes better. Let's start mixing these together. I'm going to poke my yolks and then we're going to mix until these are all kind of blended together. And then we'll add in brown sugar, vanilla, baking soda, flour, and salt. And our spice. We're going to add in pumpkin pie spice. I think gives it a little something extra. So I used the applesauce that I used was cinnamon applesauce. You can use plain applesauce as well. They don't make that much of a difference in flavor, which applesauce you make or use. Okay, we've got these kind of mixed together. Mixed it. My brain is on the fritz today. Mixed together, and now we are going to add in a teaspoon of vanilla extract. And then we're going to add in a teaspoon of pumpkin pie spice, which will give it a lot of, it's got, pumpkin pie spice is just a kind of a mixture of all of your little, holiday spices. It's got cinnamon, nutmeg, allspice, cloves, I'm sure, in here. And that's just going to give it a nice kind of festive flavor to it, even though we're in the middle of summer here for our applesauce muffins. And then let's add in our baking soda. We are going to add in a teaspoon of baking soda and we're going to mix this up and then we'll add in our sugar and our flour.
You have a question? How's Teddy doing?
He is actually doing really, really well. His surgery was very early this morning, so we actually got home by 9:45. I was surprised. I was thinking we were still going to be at the hospital. And he, definitely sore, but he's actually doing pretty good. He's been having lots of, I think he's had lots of whipped cream. I bought 4 different flavors of whipped cream and Jello and Gatorade. Those are kind of what he wanted. He asked for ice cream, but then got upset that the ice cream was cold. And I was like, sorry, there's nothing I can do to fix that. But he's actually doing really, really good. Now, I hear that it's more of day 5 through 8 that is worse for the recovery for your tonsils having out. So, I'm not looking forward to that. We're going to add in a cup of brown sugar. And this is going to just give it such a lovely flavor. The brown sugar, it's just going to play up with those spices. So we've got our cup of brown sugar, and I'm going to mix this in. into all of our wet ingredients. And then we're going to add in our flour. But because this is a nice butter base, we don't want to add in, we don't want to mix it too much. So we can get our good mixing in now. But once that flour comes in, we're just going to lightly mix it. That way we have a nice fluffy muffin. There we go. Just getting any big clumps of the brown sugar out. I know my kids were like, oh, can you make pumpkin muffins? And I'm like, yeah, I have a pumpkin. And I'm like, no, I don't. I searched and I'm like, never mind. We can make applesauce muffins, which are pretty similar to pumpkin muffins. And now we're going to add in a cup of flour. And I'm just using all-purpose flour. And we'll mix this in. And this is our muffin base. And I have my oven preheated to 350 degrees. So we'll bake these for about 20 minutes. There we go. So I'm just going to mix it until, again, we're just getting combined. So I'm making sure to kind of scrape those edges in. But this is going to be so delicious. Here we go. So looks like we are nice and mixed. You should have kind of a lumpier batter. You don't want it to be whisked until it's thinned up, because then you'll have more of a stiff muffin because we're using butter in our baking process here. Okay. Get that a little bit off the edge there. And I finally ordered muffin liners. I went through, I had like these random muffin liners that I'd kind of collected over the years. And I was like, I'm not buying new ones until I go through them. And they were like every random holiday, birthday, leftovers, under the sun. I finally got through them. And then I just got a restock of all of my little muffins. So I like to scoop my muffins in with a metal spoon. It tends to just fall off a little bit better. So we're going to fill up our little muffin tins here. And I fill mine up to the top when I'm like scooping, because I like my muffins to have a really big dome on them. So let's kind of go through. And then I'll go back over and fill these up. And this recipe should make about a dozen muffins. Now, you can always fill them a little bit less and stretch it, but I like to have that big muffin dome, what you see at the bakery, because, let's not kid ourselves. The top of the muffin is the best part on here.
Renee said that she made last night's chicken for lunch today, and it was delicious.
Oh, good. I'm glad. I'm always so happy to hear when people try out my recipes and they like them. The worst thing is if you make a recipe and nobody likes it. But I'm glad. And it's super simple. It's really that, Italian chicken or Italian fried chicken is so delicious. I know Torrin was even asking, he was like, can we have fried chicken again for lunch? And I was like, we just had it for dinner. So no. I said, but then he was sold when I told him we were going to have steak lettuce wraps. So my kids just love steak. And I wanted to do something a little different. So we're going to do this kind of avocado lime ranch, like a Southwest wrap.
Yo has her normal question. Do you know what's for dinner yet?
I do not know what's for dinner at all. I'm thinking about it. Part of me was like, my Teddy really wanted like the food that I had like fed the other, or like I had my niece and my nephew over here and I had given them some buttered meat. They just had leftovers. They had my leftovers from yesterday because we had a little bit left, and he was so sad he couldn't have those noodles. And I was like, buddy. And I'm thinking, I'm like, maybe I'll make you a soup or something that is soft, because it's not that he has to have like just straight up a liquid or a cool diet. And so I'm thinking about, I know it's in the middle of the summer, but I might make him a soup or make a soup for dinner. It's a little weird when it's 90 degrees outside, but he was just so sad. And I was like, you might be fine, but I don't want to risk it and cause him any little pain. Here we go. So we're going to go pop these in the oven at 350. And so most of the time when I cook my muffins, if I use a sour cream base, I bake them at 400. I'm baking these at 350 for 20 minutes for a little bit longer because since it has that base, that applesauce base, it just cooks up a little bit differently. So I'm going to set my timer here for 20 minutes and hopefully they'll be done by then.
Got a question. I'm probably going to butcher this. Have you ever made a zuppa toscana?
Yes, that's an Italian Tuscan soup. Zuppa is Italian for soup. I actually have, and because I did it once, and I did I guess Olive Garden copycat recipe for it, except I changed it up so it's nice creamier base instead of a thick base. But yes, I have, and I actually now makes me think I might want to do something like that for dinner, because I love that soup. I think it's delicious. My husband won't like it though because it's a cream-based soup, but it's not for him. It's for Teddy. Okay, let's get our as while those are baking, let's get our flank steak seasoned up. We're going to season it with part of our ranch packet, and then some lime juice and Worcestershire sauce. So half of it is going to go on the flank steak, half of it's going to go to make the avocado lime ranch. So we'll get those all ready here, and then we'll let it sit. Now, flank steak is one of those tricky meats where the best way to cook it is out on the grill. But we don't always have the option to grill. And so if you're going to cook it on your stove, you've got to cook it over high heat so that you're essentially searing it really fast. And then then you can let it sit and kind of cook the rest of the way on its own. It's a meat that if you overcook it, it's awful. And because it can get just so tender or so tough. So we've got our ranch here, and then I'm going to cut my lime. We're going to squeeze a little bit of our lime over it. So you're going to have the acid from both the Worcestershire and the lime juice kind of cutting through the fat in the meat. And this is a meat that I like to cook to a medium rare. So we'll have a nice pink center. And honestly, if you cook it more, it just gets so tough. But it's a delicious cut of meat if you cook it right. My sister talks about how the first time she cooked flank steak and she didn't realize that. So she cut it up and cooked it and try to cook it like fajitas in a pan. And it gets so tough so fast. And Ollie's sitting there and I'm like, you can't cook it like that. And I realized most people don't know that. But I will say if you have a chance, you just put it on the grill. It'll be even better. But I'm going to do a quick sear on the stove because you can make it on the stove. You just have to be really careful with it. You can also do it in an air fryer that is an option too. It's kind of crazy, I know. Okay, we got the Worcestershire, got the ranch on it. And then we're going to do the rest of this lime. And then we're just going to kind of let this sit and do kind of a quick marinade real quick. And while we have that going, we are going to kind of prep up our ranch and then our veggies for our lettuce wrap. So I'm going to make an avocado lime ranch today. So I'm going to save one of my avocados to go on the lettuce wraps and one's going to go in here. This one I think is more soft, so I'd rather this one go in. I'll take a peek at both. I'm going to put the less pretty one in my dressing because we're going to be mushing it up. Okay, this one looks nicer. Let me grab a spoon and a fork. And we're going to kind of put our base here. And I'm probably only going to use half of it in my ranch dressing because a little goes a long way. But it's going to make it a nice kind of creamier flavor to our our ranch. It's going to have more mellowed out. We're going to add in our lime juice. So you're going to start with half a lime, and I might use more depending on where I get it from. And there goes the lime sticker. Luckily, this is a pretty juicy lime. Sometimes you get limes that they're like older and they've dried out and they're not as good. And we're going to give this just a little bit of a mash to kind of start it. When we added more ingredients, it'll be a little bit easier, but this will get kind of the big ones. And I'm just going to use my fork and press this into the side. Now, you could always get out a little blender, immersion blender, and blend it up if you wanted to, but that's more dishes. This makes it pretty simple with just a fork. Okay, so we've kind of got our base right there. Now we're going to add in some mayo and some cream and a little bit more lime juice. Let's get a spoon for the mayo. I'm going to add in about a 1/3 cup of mayo because we're used a lot of our ranch on our meat, so we don't need that much more. So we got a 1/3 cup of mayo, and then we'll do a 1/3 cup of cream. You could use buttermilk as well. If you do milk or half and half, it's going to be a bit thinner. And then your dressing, and I like a nice kind of thicker dressing. We're going to add in our rest of our our ranch spices. I tried to use half up on our meat. I'm going to actually sprinkle a little bit more on there. And then half goes into our little dressing. And this is going to give it a nice kind of zesty flavor on the meat. Let's grab a little bit more lime juice. There we go. And that lime juice is going to kind of cut through, again, a bit of that zestiness. But this will be a nice, kind of really delicious avocado ranch. And that's the one thing, and it's like ranch is already creamy, but that avocado, I feel like just kind of gives it an even more kind of creamy flavor. And you can add even more in it, but I kind of keep it nice, mild, and has like a very pale green color to it. But it will be delicious. Now let's go kind of prep the rest of our ingredients for our wrap, and then we're going to make our glaze for our muffins. So I have we're going to do some red onions here because red onions I think will pair really well with this, and they will give a nice kind of flavor. But I'm going to cut them really, really thin. If you don't have red onions, do not sub in like a yellow onion for this. Those will be too pungent. You could use a white onion. I would just kind of blanch it first to kind of bring out some of that really sharp flavor of it. But ideally you want to use a red onion, or you could use some green onions. There we go.
You have a question? Will you be posting this meal and recipe for the dressing?
I will be posting the video of this recipe. So on the link on our page, I will post the video. So if you want to recreate it, you can always just watch again and just kind of create it from there. I try to go through all the steps as I do them. It's just a little bit easier for me that way because it takes a lot of work to make a recipe card. So we do offer some recipe cards, but they're for our members because it takes me about 30 minutes to an hour to do it versus this is just cooking for my family. Okay, so I've got my red onions. We're going to have some carrots, and I'm just going to do, normally it would be much easier. I'm going to do a matchstick carrot, but I only have these really petite ones, so this is going to be a bit more challenging than if I had a fuller size carrot. But we got to use what we have. But you want to have your carrots kind of cut nice and small. You could also use like a peeler and peel them into strands and then kind of dice it up a little bit. But again, I just had these little baby ones here. But I'm going to kind of make a little matchstick size on them. And this is going to give a little crunch to our wrap as well. And it kind of goes along with those flavors. And I feel like with wraps, you can really, like a lettuce wrap, you can do so much on the inside to add veggies. You could add cucumbers. We're going to also have tomatoes, daikon radish. You can just, cabbage, make a slaw for it. But we're going to kind of just stick with the tomatoes, carrots, and red onions for our flavors to kind of pair with those. And then, of course, some avocados. Do a few more. And then I'm going to start on my glaze, and then we'll come back with the last of the prep, and we'll start cooking up our meat here. Our meat's not going to take long to cook, again, because this is one where we want to cook on high heat. It's a pretty thin cut of meat. And then you're going to let it sit for a few minutes before you cut it up to let that residual heat cook through it, because you don't want to overcook it. Okay. Making there. I will say baby carrots, it would be much easier with a bigger carrot, but I'm like the person who I just kind of go through and I'm like, well, I have this ingredient and I have this ingredient, so we're just going to use that. And let's do our avocados. So I'm going to try, let's see if we can peel off this skin. It'll be easier if I peel off and then slice it. So you ever like wonder how in the restaurants they have like such those perfect avocados? Well, you got to wait till they're ripe, and then you peel off the skin instead of scooping it out with like a spoon, and then you can just do your thin slices. And then the way they do it, they're like, and then you've got your pretty little avocado twirl just like that, to make it all pretty but that's just like more work. But if your avocado is not ripe, it will not peel off the skin well. And so that's one of those things you just got to make sure it's nice and ripe when you do it. And my trick is, you buy them from the store, they're rock hard. You just got to let them ripen up on your counter for it's really like a day and a half. A day and a half, they'll be nice and ripe. And then just stick them in your fridge until you're ready to use them. Let's do our nice. And that way we can lay these on our things. So I did it faster, so it's not quite as pretty as the first one, but easy peasy. And you make yourself feel like you're a bougie chef while you do it. Okay, for our glaze, I'm going to be using powdered sugar, cinnamon, brown sugar, and butter, and a little bit of cream. And this is just kind of gives you a nice, richer, kind of almost like a frosting based glaze that will go on it, but it plays really, really well with the scones, or not the scones, with the applesauce muffins. I use this also on my pumpkin scones. I'm going to do about 2 tablespoons of butter. I'm going to let them warm up with, I want to say, I'm going to do about 1/4 of a cup of brown sugar. Yep. Let me go get this cleared off. I missed my bowl, but you don't want to leave the sugar on there or you'll make candy. There you go. And that will be hard to clean up. So we're going to let that melt. And as that's melting, let's kind of prep our meat to start searing off here. So I'm going to put my olive oil in here. I'm using about 1.5 tablespoons because I have a pretty good sized pan. And then we're going to let this heat up to where it's really nice and hot. And then once it's hot, we'll sear off our meat and then let it sit for a little bit before we slice it. Okay, I'm going to cut up a few tomatoes to add on here because, again, I feel like tomatoes play really well with the like kind of ranch, avocado ranch. I was deciding when I was doing this, I'm like, ooh, should I do an Asian theme or was not? And I was thinking about doing a slaw inside with the lettuce wrapped. But then I was like, no, I think I want to do like a ramen dish with like a steak ramen dish later this week. And so I was like, do slightly different. And I was like, who doesn't like a good ranch salad? Just kind of make it a little different. Make it a wrap. Here we go. My butter and my brown sugar starting to melt. So I'm going to grab a little bit of I'm going to do a fork for this because I find it's easier to mix up my glazes with a fork. Here we go. So essentially, we're going to cook the brown sugar and the butter together until you don't really feel a grit in it anymore. And that's when it kind of comes right to a little bit of a boil. Because if you don't get that grit off, then your glaze will be like a sandy glaze. It will have that gritty texture. So it doesn't take long for it to get there, but you just want to make sure you've got that grit gone for that end product. And then I'm going to add in, since we use 2 tablespoons of butter, I'm going to add in just a tablespoon of cream. And this will give us a nice kind of thinner consistency that will mix well, so our glaze isn't really like a frosting. And then we'll be adding in brown sugar as well. Okay, so we've got that. I can start to feel the grit go away. Let's add in our cinnamon. We're going to use about a half a teaspoon of cinnamon in this. If your cinnamon's old, you might want to use more. Cinnamon's one of those spices. I feel like a lot of our spices, if you don't use them regularly, they dull out in their flavor. Especially I feel like cloves, since you typically just use those at Christmas time or in the winter or in the fall. They can lose a lot of their flavor. So you might have to use a little more depending on whether your spices are fresh or not. Okay, this looks like it is good. We're going to turn that off. And now we're going to add in our powdered sugar. And I'm hoping, because I've got just about a cup or so left on this. And I think that should be more than enough. But we're going to add in, I'd like to do about a half a cup at a time because it takes a little, can go a long way. It will it will make it nice and thick really fast, but you don't want to keep having to add more liquid or more powdered sugar. So start with less powdered sugar and little amounts of liquid, because that really, like a tablespoon of liquid can absorb so much powdered sugar. There we go. We're getting a nice thing. And then I'm just going to kind of mix it until those kind of clumps of my powdered sugar are gone. You can sift your powdered sugar if you want to have a finer consistency, but it will start to dissolve in, just a minute or two. Those will kind of break up. But if you want that super fine, just sift it. Let's check our heat here. I think we're good. I'm going to do a little drop and see if I get my sizzle. Got a good sizzle, which means we are nice and hot. And we're going to let them sear off in our pan on our high heat. Now, a lot of times when I'm cooking meat, I'll turn it down, or if I'm frying this, I'm going to keep it high the whole time because I want that hot heat to sear it through and cook it faster, and then we'll let it sit and rest to do the full cooking of it. Okay. Have it there. Let me check my time. We got 2 minutes left on our muffins. Perfect. Okay, let's get this whisked up. Now, I always say the viscosity of your glaze that you want is about the thickness of Elmer's glue. So you want it to drizzle, but like a slow drizzle, not a super fast one. And you don't want it so thick that you have to spread it.
You have a question? Have you ever thought about auditioning for MasterChef?
I always sit there and I've thought about it, but I'm a person who doesn't necessarily care too much about my presentation, and they're really mean sometimes. And you have to be like away from your family for so long. And I have 5 kids, and I don't know if they would be alive if I came back. They would all not be well fed, at least. I don't know if my husband would be alive if we made it back. But I love cooking for friends and family, for myself. But I don't think I'd ever want to be a full-on like chef at a restaurant, because I think it takes the passion out of it when you've got to get this out, and people are criticizing you, and I know, I will say my kids criticize me all the time, but I can handle their criticisms. I won't take it quite as personally. Like Evie's like, oh, we're having that for dinner. And I'm like, people would kill to have this for dinner. And she's like, she's the one who I can't please, except if I make her spaghetti and meatballs. I think I had a day, 3 days in a row, that it was her favorite meals. And she was so happy. It was like spaghetti and meatballs, followed by salmon with noodles, and followed by steak. And she was like, you are making the best food, Mom. And I'm just like, I just made your 3 favorite meals in a row. Okay. I hear our muffins are going off. I'm going to just take a peek real quick. We're getting a nice sear on it. When we come back, we'll flip them and let them kind of cook up on that side. Let's get our muffins here. And we're hoping they're done. I'm going to give them a little touch feel. Oh, perfect. We got a nice firm top to them. That's how you know they're done. If you touch them and they like kind of bounce in, got a jiggle, you're going to need to cook them longer. But these turned out perfect. We've got our beautiful applesauce muffins that we spice up. We use cinnamon applesauce, and then you've got pumpkin spice in it. So it's got all of the bells and whistles on it. I'm going to flip my meat first, and then we're going to glaze these. Okay. So we've got this lovely sear on it. There we go. And now I'm going to kind of flip it, and we're going to cook it fast on the other side with it. There. Okay. And now this is flank steak. So of your cuts of meat, they are a redder cut. It's a more pink cut, but that doesn't mean that it's raw. I cook it for a medium rare, but it should have a nice pink cut in the middle. Let's drizzle this glaze over it. Here we go. So I've got, and now I like to do this while it's still hot so that the glaze will kind of melt down over it. There we go. And you can kind of glaze it any way you want. But I don't do like a full on like kind of spread on it like you would if like you were brushing on a cinnamon roll. I like just a drizzle because this has a lot of flavor and it's sweet. And I feel like if you put too much, it gets over sweet. But this brown sugar cinnamon in there with the powdered sugar is just delicious. For our applesauce muffins here using our sourdough starter. So we've got a whole half cup of sourdough starter in here. So it's a great discard recipe to use. And it's just delicious, especially if you have kids and you've got like lots of applesauce pouches around the house. It's just a great way to use them. And I think Teddy will be happy because he can eat this frosting. And I think he'll be very happy to have the frosting. Okay, let me give this. Here, got a nice, looking good. Just gonna do a quick sear on the other side. And then we'll be taking this out in just a second to kind of cut it up. And then we'll be assembling our wraps. Okay, let me grab my tongs. Now, we want to let it sit for just a few, you don't want to ever cut your meat as soon as you take it off the things, because if you cut it right now, what will happen is while it's still really hot, all those juices will pop out and like just run everywhere, and then you'll have a drier meat. So just like with steaks at home, let me turn that off. You want to make sure you let them sit for a few minutes before you cut them up. Okay, let me get our plate kind of ready. I've got to still pick apart our lettuce for our lettuce wraps. I'll grab that. And then we'll assemble them. So ideally, you'd use butter lettuce because butter lettuce is the supreme lettuce for wraps. But I just had romaine, or these romaine heads, and they still will work really well. Actually, I think I love butter red at last. I think my kids and my husband prefer romaine because it has a crunch to it, versus the nice butter ones that are more of a silky mix. So let's get our little lettuce here. And then let's see, which one do I want? I'm going to cut up this one first. And again, what I'm aiming for is hopefully a nice kind of pinkish red center. Looking good. We're going to let it, I've got enough because we're going to have this over lots of our wraps. Okay, let's assemble our wraps. And this is, again, this meat is more red than this. The cut of it is a more red of the beef cuts of meat. So don't think you've undercooked it when you still have like a pretty pink inside. That is how it is. If you overcook it to where you get to the kind of paler pink going on brown, you're going to have overcooked your meat. Okay. So we've got our nice, we're going for kind of our medium rare. So we've got that nice kind of pinkish red center there. I'm going to spread out. And as you can see, even as it's going, it's slowly getting more and more red, or more and more pink and less red. But that's what you want for a nice, juicy meat. And then we're going to put our little onions in here. A little crunch on each one. I put my dressing on first to give it a bit more flavor in that wrap versus right on top. We'll drizzle a little bit on top as well. We got our little carrots. These lettuces don't want to stand up for me. And there we go. So we've got our crunching there. We're going to drizzle in our tomatoes for each one. And then we'll kind of throw our avocados on. And then we're going to go back over again with a light drizzle of our avocado ranch. And you want to kind of sandwich it in. That way you have that flavor for the whole part of it. And of course, we will serve these up with our applesauce muffin. I'm going to take one out. They've sat now, so they're not super hot. But look at this. You're going to have this nice kind of, look how it's steaming soft. I'll cut in there. Beautiful, moist applesauce muffin with a cinnamon brown sugar glaze. Pretty yummy lunch today. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining us here today. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I try to do live cooking shows every single day, show you what we're making for our family, and hopefully teach you guys something along the way. Again, we do upload all of our videos to the link on our page. So if you ever want to recreate any of our recipes at home, you just need to, go to that link, search for what we cooked for, and cook along with me again. We also have a link to our Amazon storefront that has all of our cooking gadgets. I got my Hexclad pans in there. I've got my muffin tins, my knives, everything that I use in the kitchen I have in there if you want to check those out. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining us here today. Don't forget to like and subscribe.